I hired a plumber to handle a leak at my son and daughter-in-law's place, while they were soaking up the sun down in Punta Cana. 2 hours later, that plumber called me back, and his voice was shaking so badly I could barely make out the words coming through the phone. "Sir, I need you to drive over here right now. There's a little boy hiding behind the water heater. He won't come out. He won't even speak to me, sir." I floored that gas pedal harder than I've ever pushed any vehicle in my entire 67 years on this earth. And what I uncovered down in that basement, it tore my whole family clean down the middle. Before I take you any deeper into this story, do me one small favor tonight. Tap that subscribe button. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I read every single one of them. My name is Harold Whitaker. I'm 67 years old, and I live on a quiet little street on the south side of Tulsa, Oklahoma. For 41 years, 41 of them, I worked the pediatric emergency room at St. Francis Hospital. 41 years of holding tiny shaking hands while doctors stitched wounds shut. 41 years of looking parents straight in the eye and promising them their kid was going to make it through the night. And on the worst nights, the kind of nights you never quite forget, sitting beside families when the news wasn't the kind you can soften with kind words. I retired 3 years ago this past April. People always ask me if I miss the work. Honest answer? I miss the children. I don't miss what those years taught me to recognize. You spend that long in pediatric emergency. You start growing something extra inside you. Call it a sixth sense, call it whatever you like. You can tell which bruises came from a kid wiping out on a skateboard, and which ones came from a grown adult's closed fist. You learn how a child's eyes flick toward a parent before they answer the simplest question. You learn how to read silence, the way other folks read print. I always promised myself I'd never have to put that knowledge to work inside my own house. Turns out I was dead wrong about that. Wrong in a way that still keeps me staring at the ceiling some nights, even now. And let me tell you something right up front. If you've ever told yourself the same kind of comfortable lie I told myself for years, that not in my family, not my people, not my blood, I want you to listen real close to what I'm about to share with you. Because the worst things in this world, they almost never happen to strangers. They happen at the kitchen tables of folks just like you and me. My boy is named Tyler. He's 34 years old now, my only child, my only son. His mama, my wife Margaret, she passed 11 years ago this October from ovarian cancer. After Margaret was gone, it was just me and Tyler for a stretch of years. Just the two of us, fumbling our way through holidays and Sunday suppers, trying to figure out how to be a family of two when we'd always been a family of three. Tyler works as a regional manager for an auto parts distributor over near the airport. Decent paycheck. Drives a black Ford F-150 he washes every Saturday morning, rain or shine. He used to call me every Sunday evening, regular as the church bells across the street from my place. "Hey Pop, just checking in on you." We'd talk about the Sooners game. About a fishing trip up to Grand Lake we kept saying we'd take and never quite got around to. About nothing in particular, just a father and son keeping a line open between two houses. That all stopped when he met Madison Hollister 5 years back. She was 29, divorced once already, had a marketing degree she never seemed to actually use for any kind of normal job. She had what folks down here might politely call a presence, loud laugh, designer purses she wore like body armor. The kind of woman who walks into a room and rearranges the energy without ever asking permission from anybody. That first Thanksgiving, I had them over to my little ranch house. Madison spent the entire afternoon glued to her phone, scrolling, tapping, taking pictures of her own plate before anybody else got to take a single bite. When I asked her if she wanted to help me carve the bird, she gave me a look like I'd asked her to slaughter the thing in the front yard with a hatchet. Tyler married her 8 months later, at some all-inclusive resort down in Tulum, Mexico. I wasn't invited to the rehearsal dinner. I told myself that was just how young people do things these days. I told myself a whole lot of things back then. 3 years ago, I made what I genuinely believed was the kindest gesture I had left in me. I owned a 4-bedroom brick ranch over on Magnolia Drive, the very house Tyler grew up inside. After Margaret died, it had gotten too quiet in there. Too full of her perfume that wouldn't fade out of the closets. Too full of the corners where she used to read in the evenings with her reading glasses sliding down her nose. I'd been talking about selling it and downsizing for years. So instead, I told Tyler and Madison they could move in. Rent-free. Just get on their feet, I said. Build something solid for the future. I kept the deed in my name, mind you. Partly because my attorney, a man named Frank who'd been with me since Margaret's estate, insisted on it real firm. And partly because, well, 41 years of watching families come unglued in hospital corridors had taught me one hard-earned thing. Nothing protects love like paperwork that survives it. Pop, you're the absolute best, Tyler told me, hugging me tight the morning I handed over those keys. We're never going to forget what you did for us. People say a lot of pretty things in moments like that, friends. Most of those pretty things, they have a shelf life, a real short one. Now let me stop right here for just a second, because I want to share something with you. If you're a parent or a grandparent watching this right now, and somebody in your family has just hugged you tight and made you a promise like that, I want you to write down the date, not because I want you to hold them to it, just because, well, sometimes it helps later, when the silence comes, to know exactly when the silence started. The Sunday calls dried up inside of 6 months. The visits to my place dropped down to Christmas Eve and my birthday. Then just my birthday. Then a card in the mail with Madison's curly handwriting on the front. Whenever I'd suggest swinging by Magnolia Drive, there was always some reason. Madison was repainting the dining room. Tyler had a work thing. The dog had been throwing up, even though I knew for a fact they didn't have a dog. After a stretch of that, I just stopped suggesting. A father can only knock on a closed door so many times before he starts to feel like a stranger ringing a doorbell asking for spare change. So when my phone lit up on a Tuesday morning in early September, and Tyler's name came up on the screen, I almost didn't recognize the picture attached to his contact. It had been 4 months since I'd heard his voice. Hey, Pop. Listen, I need a favor. No. How are you doing? No. How's the garden coming along? Just straight to the ask. The way somebody asks a question when they already know the answer is going to be yes. What's going on, son? Madison and I are flying out to Punta Cana this Saturday. 8 days at this all-inclusive she's been wanting to try forever. Thing is, the kitchen sink's been backing up for about a week, and there's a slow leak from the upstairs bath that's starting to spot the ceiling drywall. Could you call somebody for us? Get a plumber in there while we're gone? I'll Venmo you back the second we land back in Tulsa, promise. I sat there at my kitchen table, looking down at the half-finished crossword puzzle in front of me. 8 days at an all-inclusive in the Dominican Republic. But somehow they couldn't carve out one single afternoon for a plumber's appointment. They could, however, call me. Called me when something needed taking care of. I don't have a key to that house anymore, Tyler. I gave the spare back to y'all when you asked for it. Right, that's right. I'll leave one under the planter on the porch. The terracotta one, with the dead succulent in it. Just have him swing by Sunday morning. The plumbing's only going to get worse if we let it sit while we're gone. Why don't you just have somebody come out today before you fly out? I just feel better doing it while we're gone, Pop. We don't want to deal with all the noise and the mess. You know how Madison gets. I knew how Madison got. I also knew how Tyler had started letting you know how Madison gets become his default explanation for every single thing in his life. I told him I'd take care of it. He said, "Thanks, Dad. You're a real lifesaver." And the line clicked dead. No goodbye. No I love you, Pop. Just the soft little click of a man who'd gotten exactly what he came for and didn't owe me one single thing more. I sat at that kitchen table a long while afterward, the morning light spilling across the cold coffee in my mug, and I remember thinking how strange it was that he wanted me involved with that house only when nobody he cared about was actually inside it. Now, if you found yourself in a situation like this, where someone you love only ever calls you to ask for something, I want you to listen real close to that little voice in your gut, the one that whispers something doesn't add up. That voice exists for a reason, my friends. Mine had been whispering for years. I'd just gotten real good at pretending I couldn't hear it. I picked up the phone again and called a man named Dwight Patterson. Dwight had run the plumbing maintenance over at St. Francis for almost 2 decades before he started his own outfit. Good man, 3 kids of his own. Says grace before he eats a sandwich at a job site. We'd kept in touch the way men our age do when we like each other but never quite make the time. Christmas cards. A couple of beers at the hospital fundraiser every spring. He picked up on the second ring. "Whitaker, you old timber wolf. Tell me you're calling about a fishing trip out to Grand Lake." I told him what I needed. He said he could fit me in Sunday morning, no problem at all. Friends and family rate. I gave him the address on Magnolia Drive. Sunday morning, I drove over there early and let myself in with the spare key from underneath the dead succulent planter, the house I had raised my own boy inside of. It didn't feel like that house anymore. The walls were painted some kind of off-white shade Madison probably had a fancy magazine name for. The hallway was plastered floor to ceiling with framed photographs of the two of them at beaches, the two of them at concerts, the two of them in front of restaurants. There must have been 30 pictures lining that one hallway alone, not a single picture of Margaret, not one of me, not one single solitary photo of Tyler as a little boy in his Cub Scout uniform or holding up a fish from the lake. It was like the first 31 years of his entire life had been edited out of the family record book. I walked through the rooms slow, making sure everything was unlocked for Dwight. The kitchen, the upstairs bathroom, the basement, where the water heater sat, tucked back into the corner. The basement door was at the very end of the back hallway, and when I tried that handle, it was locked. Not a deadbolt, mind you, just one of those little pin locks you can pop open with a paper clip from the desk drawer. I stood there staring at that door for a full minute, maybe longer. Who in the world locks the basement door inside their own home? Dwight pulled into the driveway in his work truck right then, and I told myself I'd ask Tyler about it later. I popped that little pin lock with a hairpin from the bathroom drawer and showed Dwight around. He said he'd be a couple hours, maybe 3. Told me to get on home and he'd ring me when he was wrapping up. I drove back to my place and tried my best to forget about that locked door, about all those missing photographs, about the feeling crawling up the back of my neck like a cold finger. The exact same feeling I used to get walking into hospital rooms where the parents wouldn't quite look at the chart, wouldn't quite meet my eyes when I asked the simple questions. I was out in my workshop around 11:30, sharpening a chisel for a chair I was rebuilding, when my phone rang. Dwight. His voice was wrong. Now Dwight was the kind of man who joked through everything. I once watched him crack jokes while a busted pipe sprayed sewage halfway up the wall of the hospital cafeteria. The voice on the other end of the line right then. That was not that man. Whitaker. I need you to come down here right now. I'm on Magnolia Drive. There's a little boy hiding behind the water heater. He won't come out. He won't say a single word to me. I just need you to come, please. I dropped that chisel right onto the workbench. Dwight, what did you just say to me? I went down to check the heater because the leak might be coming through the floor from the upstairs bath. There's a kid down here, Whitaker. Looks 4, maybe 5 years old. He was tucked behind the heater on a pile of blankets when I moved a box. I scared him. He scared me half to death. Whitaker, please come. I don't know what to do with this. Don't move from that spot. I'm on my way. Don't try to pull him out. Just sit down on the basement steps where he can see your face and talk soft and slow. 15 minutes. I'll be there. I made that 15-minute drive in 9. The kind of 9 minutes you don't actually remember afterward. Just the squeal of brakes, the blur of mailboxes flashing past my window, the cold, heavy stone settling deep down into my chest, the same stone I recognized from 100 ER nights when somebody else's child was on the way. And I didn't know yet what shape they'd be in when those ambulance doors swung open. If you've never had to drive somewhere not knowing what kind of damage you're about to find at the end of the road, be grateful, friend. Just be grateful you've never had to know what that drive feels like. Dwight was waiting on the front porch when I pulled up. No toolbox in his hand, no ball cap on his head. Just standing there with his hands shoved deep into his work pants pockets like he'd plain forgotten what hands were even for. He's still down there, Dwight told me. I gave him a juice box from my truck cooler. He drank the whole thing in one swallow. Whitaker, that boy. I work on a lot of houses. I don't know what I'm looking at down there. I told him to wait upstairs. Then I went down those basement steps slow, one at a time. The way you go downstairs when 41 years of working with kids who flinched at sudden movements is sitting heavy on your shoulders. The basement was finished, sort of. Cheap carpet on the floor. Drywall painted gray. A futon shoved up against one wall under a tiny high window. The water heater sat in the back corner behind a half wall of cinder block. I came around that wall slow. He was sitting cross-legged on a folded comforter that had been wedged into the gap between the heater and the back wall. A little boy, skinny in the kind of way that takes a long time to get to. The kind of skinny where you can see the shape of his collarbone right through his t-shirt. His hair was light brown and uneven, like somebody had hacked at it with kitchen scissors. He had on a pair of pajama pants printed with little blue dinosaurs and a gray t-shirt that was 3 sizes too big and stained dark at the hem. There was a little plastic flashlight beside him, a coloring book missing most of its pages, 3 broken crayons, and a plastic bowl with the dried orange ring of macaroni and cheese still crusted around the inside. He looked up at me, and I saw it. I saw it the way I'd seen it 100 times across a triage desk in my career. The flat, watchful eyes, the body held perfectly still, the breath shallow and quiet and trained. Trained, friends. This was a child who had been carefully taught not to be a problem. I crouched down about 6 feet away from him, lower than his eye line. I put both my hands flat down on the carpet so he could see them clear. "Hey there, buddy. My name's Harold. I'm not going to come any closer than this, okay? I'm just going to sit right here on the floor for a minute. The man upstairs who scared you. His name is Dwight. He's a friend of mine. He didn't know you were down here. Nobody is mad at you. I promise you that. He didn't move. Didn't blink. Didn't even seem to breathe. Are you hungry, honey? Are you thirsty? I can get you anything you'd like." He just stared at me for what felt like the longest stretch of time. Then his lower lip started trembling. His big brown eyes filled up with tears. But he didn't make a single sound. I'd seen that too. Children who have learned, somehow, somewhere, not to cry out loud. "Are you supposed to stay quiet, sweetheart?" A small nod. "Who told you to stay quiet?" "Madison." The name landed in my chest like the swing of a sledgehammer. He said it the way other little kids might say the name of a teacher they were scared of. No mom, no auntie, just Madison, plain as exposed bone. "Can you tell me your name, son?" Another long pause. "Noah, Noah, that's a beautiful name. How old are you?" "Noah? I'm 4. I'll be 5 at Christmas time." "Noah, can I ask you a question?" "You don't have to answer if you don't want to." "Whose house is this?" "Tyler and Madison's." "Tyler is my dad. Sometimes when he comes back from the trips he says hi to me. Sometimes he gives me a Snickers bar. The trips are when the people are here, so I have to be downstairs." The room went very, very quiet. "The people, Noah. What people are you talking about?" "Madison's friends. They come over with the cameras and the big lights, and they take pictures in the kitchen and the living room. Madison says I'm not allowed to be in the pictures because I'm not part of the brand." I had to sit down then, right there on that filthy basement carpet 6 feet away from this little boy. I had to put one hand flat on the floor just to keep from tipping over sideways. I'd been a pediatric nurse for 41 years. I thought I had seen the bottom of what human beings will do to each other. I had not. I had not seen this bottom. If you've ever felt that exact moment, that moment when the floor of what you believed possible just drops clean out from underneath your feet, you know what I'm describing. You don't recover from that drop, not really. You just keep going. And let me tell you, if I had been thinking with my heart in that second, instead of my training, I would have run upstairs and put my fist through the kitchen wall. But that little boy in front of me, he needed me steady. And steady is what he was going to get. "Noah, sweetheart, when did you last eat something?" He thought hard about it. "Madison made me sandwiches in the little fridge before they left. There's still some left, and juice boxes. She said the sandwiches are for 2 days each." The little fridge. There was a tiny mini fridge tucked underneath the basement steps. The kind college kids buy for dorm rooms. I hadn't even noticed it walking past. "Noah, when do they come back home?" "When the calendar gets to the red circle." He pointed up at the wall. There was a printed paper calendar tacked above the futon. Today's date had a little smiley face penciled in the corner. 8 days from today had a circle drawn around it, in red marker. 8 days. 8 days of pre-portioned sandwiches in a college mini-fridge. A flashlight. A coloring book missing most of its pages. A 4-year-old boy. "Noah, can I ask you just one more thing? Where's your mama, son? Who lives here in this house with you?" My voice was shaking by then, and I hated that, because I knew he could hear it. The lady, Madison, and Tyler sometimes. My mommy went to heaven a long, long time ago. I was little. I don't really remember her. Madison said I belong to Tyler now because of the papers. The papers? The cold thing inside my chest got even colder. Noah. Would it be all right if I picked you up and we went upstairs and I made you a real meal? You don't have to stay back here behind the heater anymore. Not ever again." He looked at me with those wary, carefully calibrated eyes. "Will Madison be mad?" "Noah, I am personally going to make sure that Madison is never mad at you again. For as long as you live. Do you trust me to keep that promise?" He thought about it. He was 4 years old, and he was actually weighing whether he could trust me. The weight of that, I'm telling you, I'll carry it the rest of my natural life. He nodded. I held out both my hands. He came to me on his own 2 little feet. He weighed almost nothing in my arms, less than a sack of feed from the hardware store. I carried him up those basement steps, and Dwight was standing in the kitchen with tears just rolling down his face. A grown man I had once watched wade ankle-deep in a flooded sewer line while cracking jokes about his ex-wife, and he was crying, because he knew exactly what I knew. I sat Noah down at the kitchen table and I made him a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. The only thing I could find in those cabinets that wasn't Madison's pre-portioned macro-counted food sealed up in glass containers. Dwight poured him a glass of milk from the fridge. The boy ate that sandwich the way starving men in old black-and-white movies eat. He ate another one right after, then half a third. Now I want to stop right here for a second and tell you what was running through my head at that kitchen table. Because if I'm being honest with you, I was trying to decide how angry I was allowed to be. Because if I let myself feel the full size of it right then, I wasn't going to be useful to the boy in front of me, and he needed me to be useful. Not angry. Useful. If you ever find yourself in a moment like that, where the worst thing you could possibly imagine has just walked into your life dressed as a 4-year-old kid in oversized clothes, remember that. Be useful first. Be furious later. There will be plenty of time for furious. Furious can wait. While Noah was eating his second sandwich, I called 911. I gave them the address on Magnolia Drive. I told the dispatcher I was a retired pediatric ER nurse. Malnourished child. Possible long-term neglect. Possible unlawful confinement. I requested a unit and a CPS rapid response. The dispatcher knew the codes I was using because nurses use those exact codes. Then I called my friend Dr. Vivian Marsh, who runs the pediatric trauma team over at St. Francis. "Vivian, I need you to take a personal patient for me today." She didn't ask one question. She just said, "Bring him, side entrance. I'll meet you there myself." The Tulsa County Sheriff's deputy who showed up first was a young woman with kind eyes named Officer Kowalski. Calm, careful. Exactly the kind of officer you pray for in a moment like that. The CPS investigator rolled in 20 minutes after her. A man in his early 50s named Roy Henderson, who I had crossed paths with maybe a dozen times back in my ER days. We knew each other's faces. "Whitaker," he said when he saw me. "What are we looking at here?" I told him. The basement, the mini fridge, the calendar with the red circle, the pre-portioned sandwiches, the flashlight, the fact that little Noah had been told to stay quiet during the photo shoots upstairs, the fact that the boy had told me his stepmother said he wasn't part of the brand. Roy's face didn't shift much. People in our line of work, our faces stopped shifting after a while. He just took it all down. Every word. Then he and Officer Kowalski went down into that basement, and they photographed everything. The half-empty bowl of dried macaroni, the calendar with the red circle, the narrow gap behind the water heater where a 4-year-old child had been told to live for 8 days at a stretch. Noah rode in my truck to St. Francis Hospital. They let him because he'd already had enough strangers for one lifetime, let alone one day. Vivian met us at the side entrance with a wheelchair he didn't need, and a stuffed gray elephant he very much did. She took him gently, and she looked at me right over the top of his head, and her eyes told me everything I needed to know before any of the lab work came back. They kept him overnight. The medical findings were exactly what my hands had already told me when I picked him up off that comforter. Significant malnutrition, vitamin D deficiency consistent with prolonged lack of sunlight, untreated dental decay in 3 of his baby teeth, a partially healed green stick fracture in his left forearm that had set itself crooked because nobody had ever taken him to a doctor for it, no record of pediatric care of any kind for over 2 years, no school enrollment, no immunizations past age 2. As far as the great state of Oklahoma was officially concerned, Noah Brewster had simply stopped existing back in 2023. While the doctors worked on him, I sat with Roy Henderson in the family waiting room, and we pieced the rest of it together. Noah's mother, a young woman named Rachel Brewster, had been Tyler's girlfriend for about 2 years before he ever met Madison. She died of an opioid overdose when Noah was 18 months old. Tyler was awarded full custody. There was a survivor benefit from Rachel's Social Security, and a small trust her own mother, Noah's grandmother, had set up before she passed away the year after. Roughly $1,400 a month deposited into an account in Noah's name, with Tyler listed as the custodian. I had Roy pull the bank records that very afternoon. The withdrawals matched, almost dollar for dollar. The lease payments on Madison's pearl white Range Rover, and the recurring monthly charges from a place out in Jenks called Riverside Aesthetic Skin and Wellness. Tyler had a son. My grandson. He was 4 years old. He had been alive on this earth for 4 whole years, and I had not known his name, not his birthday, not the color of his eyes. They had hidden him inside my own house, the house I had given them, down in the basement where my old workbench used to sit, the exact corner where I had taught Tyler how to sand a piece of pine and stain it without leaving streaks. Right there. They had taken the money meant to keep that little boy in shoes and clothes and pediatricians' offices, and they had spent it on a leased SUV and laser facials. And when they wanted to vacation in Punta Cana for 8 days, they had stocked a college mini-fridge with 8 days' worth of pre-portioned sandwiches and locked a 4-year-old child behind a water heater, and they had called me to send a plumber over, so that nothing would smell wrong when they got home. I drove home from St. Francis at 1 o'clock in the morning, after Noah had finally fallen asleep with my finger gripped tight in his little fist. I sat at my kitchen table in the dark. 41 years of nursing. I had watched parents get charged. I had testified in custody hearings. I had sat next to detectives at depositions and given them the medical timeline that put grown adults in prison cells. I knew exactly which doors to knock on, exactly which forms to file, exactly which words to use to make a system that ordinarily moves slow start moving fast. My son had no idea who his father actually was. He had spent the last 5 years of his life treating me like a wallet with opinions, like a holiday inconvenience, like an old man who didn't know what he didn't know. He was about to find out. He was about to find out exactly who his father had been all along. The next morning at 7 o'clock sharp, I was on the phone with Roy Henderson filing for emergency kinship placement. By 9, I was sitting across the desk from a family law attorney named Patricia Donovan. Patricia's retainer was steep. Her reputation was steeper. By noon, I had a list put together. Photographs of the basement. Diagrams of the gap behind the heater. Dwight Patterson's signed, sworn statement. The 911 call recording. Officer Kowalski's incident report. Roy's preliminary CPS findings. The medical workup from St. Francis. The bank records showing every single withdrawal Tyler had pulled from Noah's account in the last 26 months. The DMV records for the Range Rover. The Riverside Aesthetic monthly invoices going back 2 full years. And Madison's Instagram archived page by page. Every single sponsored post she'd filmed in that kitchen above where her stepson had been hiding. Patricia spread it all across her conference table at the end of the second day. She looked up at me over her reading glasses and she said, "Mr. Whitaker, in 22 years of family law, I have rarely seen a case build itself this neatly. We are going to bury them. I want kinship placement converted to permanent guardianship. I want Tyler's parental rights terminated entirely. I want criminal referrals filed with the district attorney's office for child neglect, child endangerment, and embezzlement of a minor's funds. And I want Madison charged as a co-perpetrator under those exact same statutes." Patricia smiled the way prosecutors smile. "All of that is on the table, Mr. Whitaker. All of it. Now, if you've ever had to take legal action against someone in your own family, you know there's a moment where you have to make peace with what you're about to do. It is not a comfortable peace. It does not feel righteous in the way the movies make it feel. It feels like losing something you can never get back. I want you to know that. I want you to know I made my peace with it, and I would do it again tomorrow without flinching one bit." Tyler called me from Punta Cana the very next morning. The Dominican Federal Police had paid him a polite little visit at his beachfront resort, at the request of the United States State Department. Because that's what happens when there's an active CPS investigation and a child welfare hold in an open criminal file in the United States with your name printed on it. Dad. His voice was a long way away from the voice he had used when he wanted a plumber. Dad, what did you do? What I did, son, was answer my phone when a plumber called me crying. What you did is something I'm still trying to wrap my head around. You can't take my kid. He's mine. The papers say he's mine. The papers, Tyler. The papers are exactly what's about to bury you. He started yelling then. I could hear Madison behind him screeching about lawyers and reputations and Instagram. I held that phone away from my ear until they were both done. Then I put it back. Listen to me very carefully, son. You are going to come home to Tulsa. You are going to walk yourself into the Tulsa County Sheriff's Office on Denver Avenue, and you are going to surrender for questioning. You are not going to set 1 foot back inside the house on Magnolia Drive. The locks were changed yesterday afternoon by my locksmith, because that house is in my name, and you are now a person under active criminal investigation by the state of Oklahoma for the abuse of a minor on my property. If you want a lawyer, I suggest you hire one before your plane wheels touch down at Tulsa International. And one more thing, don't you ever, ever, in this life or the next, call that little boy by his last name in front of me again. He was Noah Brewster the day his mother died, and he is Noah Brewster the day I take him out of your hands. The last thing you took from him was the only thing his mama left him, and you are going to give it back to him. The line clicked dead. The next 9 months were a war. A war fought across courtrooms and CPS offices, and the pediatric clinic at St. Francis, where Noah got his teeth fixed, where they had to re-break his arm and reset it properly, where he got a vaccination schedule started over from scratch, like a newborn baby. I slept on the couch in my living room and gave Noah my bedroom. I bought him a real bed, a comforter printed all over with planets and rocket ships, a nightlight shaped like a little blue mushroom, a closet packed with clothes that actually fit. I enrolled him in pre-K at a small Montessori school out in Brookside, where the teacher cried the very first time she saw his intake paperwork. And then she never let him see her cry again, not once. I learned how to cook 3 meals a day for a small child instead of just 1 a day for an old man. I learned the difference between regular Cheerios and the kind a 4-year-old will actually eat without complaining. I sat on the kitchen floor with him most evenings, and we drew pictures with the new crayons I bought him. The big yellow box, all 64 colors. Because nobody was ever going to ration crayons in front of this boy again. Not while I was still drawing breath on this earth. If you have a child or a grandchild in your life right now, give them more than they ever ask for. Not money, not toys. Time, patience. The kind of attention that makes them feel like they are the most important small person in any room you walk into together. That is the only inheritance that actually matters when all the dust settles. Tyler and Madison lawyered up. Of course they did. They tried to claim it was all a misunderstanding, that Noah had hidden himself down there, that the basement was just where the boy liked to play. The judge was a woman named Eleanor Hawthorne, who had spent her own 30-year career as a child advocate before taking the bench. She listened to that argument with a face that could have curdled fresh milk in the carton. She terminated Tyler's parental rights at the end of the 3rd hearing. She granted me permanent guardianship and approved my petition for full adoption. Madison pled out to 2 years in state custody and a felony record she will be filling in on every job application for the rest of her natural life. Tyler took his case all the way to trial because his attorney told him he might beat it. He did not beat it. He got 4.5 years in an Oklahoma state prison for child neglect and felony embezzlement of his son's federal benefits and trust funds. The judge, Eleanor Hawthorne, when she handed down that sentence, she said one sentence, "I will carry with me the rest of my days." She said, "Sir, you starved your child while you were eating shrimp at a swim-up bar." The Range Rover got repossessed by the leasing company the following Tuesday. The Instagram brand Madison had spent 4 years carefully constructing collapsed in 3 days when the Tulsa World ran the story on the front page of the Metro section. The sponsors dropped her one after another like dominoes. The followers turned on her with the kind of fury the internet specializes in serving up cold. Last I heard through somebody at the courthouse. She's working a register at a gas station out near Broken Arrow now, and she is not allowed within 500 feet of any minor child anywhere in the state. As for the house on Magnolia Drive, I sold it. I couldn't walk back into that place without seeing the gap behind the water heater. I couldn't stand in that kitchen without seeing the photo shoots. I used the money to put a real down payment on a small 2-bedroom cottage with a fenced-in backyard for Noah, Just 5 minutes walk from a good elementary school in Midtown. 5 minutes from a park with a swing set the boy wore out within his first month of living there. It's been a year and a half now. Noah turned 6 this past Christmas. He weighs exactly what a 6-year-old should weigh. His arm healed straight the second time around. He laughs out loud now, which is something he did not do for the first 3 solid months he lived under my roof. The first time I heard him laugh, a real belly laugh at something on a Saturday morning cartoon, I had to walk into the kitchen and pretend I was looking for something deep in the back of the refrigerator, so he wouldn't see his Pop crying into the cold cuts. He calls me Pop, the same name Tyler used to call me before Tyler forgot. He sleeps with the little blue mushroom nightlight on. He has a best friend in his kindergarten class named Marcus, who comes over for blueberry pancakes on Saturday mornings. His teacher tells me he is smart and kind and a little bit protective of the smaller kids in the class, which doesn't surprise me one single bit. He doesn't ask about Tyler anymore. He used to, in the early months, in the quiet, careful way he asked about everything back then. Then one night while I was tucking him in, he told me, "Pop, I think you're my dad now." And I told him, "Sweetheart, I am whatever you need me to be, for as long as you need me to be it." He nodded the way a small boy nods at something he has already decided in his own heart. And he hasn't asked again, not once. People sometimes ask me if I regret it, calling 911 on my own son, tearing my own family in half, putting my own boy in a state prison cell. I tell them the same truth every single time. My family was already torn in half. It got torn the day my son let his wife shove a child behind a water heater because he wasn't part of the brand. I didn't tear it. I just stopped pretending I couldn't see what was already torn. Now I want to tell you what this whole thing taught me. Because if you've watched this far, you deserve more than just a sad story to take into your weekend. This taught me that paperwork matters more than most folks realize. Keep the deed in your name when you let family use a property. Get the trust documents in writing. Talk to a real estate attorney before you ever hand over the keys to any property, even to your own grown children. If you are a grandparent watching this from anywhere in the United States, look up your state's Department of Human Services and ask them about kinship guardianship rights. Those rights exist for a reason. The reason is Noah, and 10,000 other little Noahs out there in basements and closets and locked-back bedrooms all across this country tonight. This taught me that the worst mistake most folks make in this life is assuming that family is automatically safe. Family is not automatically anything. Family has to be earned every single day by every single member with every single choice. And when somebody in your family stops earning it, you have to stop pretending they still are. If you've been in a situation where a child in your life has just gone quiet in a way that doesn't sit right, do not wait for a cleaner answer to come along, friend. Cleaner answers do not come. The answer arrives ugly, or it doesn't arrive at all. If you've been watching a relative grow more and more controlling of their kids' time and access, that is a flag. If you've noticed a child suddenly disappearing from family photos, that is a flag. If a parent in your family starts making excuses every single time you suggest a visit, that is a flag. None of those flags by themselves prove anything, but 3 of them together. 3 of them together is a quilt. Here is one concrete thing you can do today. Tonight, if you want, if there is a child in your extended family you haven't laid eyes on in more than 3 months, and somebody keeps making excuses, go visit unannounced. Bring cookies. Bring a stuffed animal. Bring nothing at all. Just go. And look that child in the eyes. Listen for what they aren't saying. And ask yourself this hard question before you fall asleep tonight. Is there a small voice somewhere inside me right now, whispering about somebody I love, that I have been carefully training myself not to hear? Because if there is, that voice exists for a reason. Mine did. If you've made it all the way to the end of this story with me, do me one last favor. Go find a child in your life. Look that child square in the eyes. Listen for what they aren't telling you. The world is full of Noahs. Some of them are tucked behind water heaters. Some of them are sitting at your own dinner table in plain sight. The only thing that gets them out is somebody who is paying attention. Be that somebody. Please, be that somebody tonight. Now before you click off this video, I want you to do 3 things for me down in the comments. Comment number 1, if you think I did the right thing the day I called 911 on my own son. Comment number 2, if you think Tyler and Madison deserved a second chance from this family before any of this hit a courtroom. And comment number 3, if you have ever, in your own life, found yourself in a situation like this one, where you had to choose between protecting a child and protecting a relationship with somebody you loved. And right below that, drop a comment telling me what city and what country you are watching from tonight, and what time it is on your clock right now. I read every single one of them. I love hearing from folks all over this great big world we share. Tonight especially. I want to know who's out there with me. And if you want to know what happened the very first time Tyler wrote me a letter from prison asking for forgiveness, and what I wrote back to him on a yellow legal pad at my kitchen table at 2 o'clock in the morning, hit that subscribe button right now, because that is the next story I am going to tell you on this channel. Quick disclaimer before we close out tonight. This is a fictional story inspired by common cases of family neglect that happen far too often, but it has been 100% rewritten by me, here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to avoid reused content and bring you something that hits a little different. The names, the places, the small details, they are mine. The lessons inside them, those are for all of us to share. If you like this story tonight, hit that like button, hit subscribe, and tap the little notification bell so you don't miss the next one. Good night from Oklahoma, friends. Hug your grandkids tonight. Tell them they are part of every story in your family. Every single one. Good night.